Hey, this is Erica from Ever Educating, and this channel is teaching tips, tools, ideas, and resources for new college instructors. In today's video, I want to talk about peer review. Peer review can be very hard for students to do well. A lot of times they only give the positive, or they're extremely critical. They say almost nothing. They're confused about what to say at all. And so I thought I'd give some ideas of how to approach a peer review activity in your classroom. And so to begin, a lot of times there's this assumption that they know how to review each other's work, and so the prompt is literally get one of your classmates' papers, critique it, review it, and give it back to them with no guidance. And so I would recommend not doing that, especially not the first time around. So maybe at the end of the semester they're more familiar with how to do this and they can do it without guidance. But my first recommendation is having some kind of guide in your peer review activity that you assign. So you might have, okay, you're going to answer these 7 questions when you're reviewing your classmate's essay. And so first you're going to answer this question that's tied to formatting. Is it Times New Roman, 12-point font, the right margin size, double spaced, that kind of stuff? Does it have the 3 required MLA citations of academic sources? Does it have, the title properly, positioned? Does it have the MLA header, right? So you might have formatting questions to begin, and they can answer those. But then you can have okay, do they have an introduction with a clear thesis? Underline what you think the thesis is, right? So the student that's partnered with them can see, okay, that's not my thesis. Why do you think it was that? Or if there's nothing underlined, then okay, they don't think I have a thesis. That's a problem, right? So you might have kind of chronological. Okay, look at the intro paragraph. Is there a thesis? Underline it. Give your thoughts on the intro. Does it make sense how they're connecting their introduction material to the thesis statement that they have? Okay, look at the body paragraphs. Do each of them start with a topic sentence? If not, point out when there's a topic sentence missing. Do they transition well from one to another? If not, point out where transition phrases could be included. So thinking about the format still, but more grammar syntax type of formatting. And then go on from there. Are they answering the prompt? Have they analyzed this or compared that? Are they making an argument about X, right? So kind of really saying are they actually completing the assignment as is required of them, right? And then maybe you have questions about, give feedback on any sentence that confuses you. If you don't understand the meaning of them, if you think the punctuation is really off here, that kind of thing. The conclusion paragraph, does it make sense how they're completing the essay? Does it feel incomplete still? Does the conclusion not really match the introduction? So it doesn't have a kind of full circle kind of feel to it, right? So kind of giving them guidance on what to kind of look at when they're reading this essay and responding to it. So that can be one approach, having a guide that you give them when they're doing the peer review. Now, another approach you can do is what I call peer review speed dating, right? And so in this case, rather than having 2 students pair up, exchange an essay, and critique the essay, you have this as a class activity, live happening. So everybody brings in their manuscript draft on paper, most likely to make this easy. And you're okay, I want you to pass this to the person to your right. And so everybody passes it out. Okay, I want you to read the intro paragraph, and I want you to underline the thesis. If you don't think there's a thesis, I want you to say that on, next to the paragraph. Don't know what your thesis is, don't see it, right? And that's your focus. Okay, you've figured out what the thesis is, or you've pointed out when there is no thesis. Now give feedback on it. What are your thoughts? Is it strong? Is it confusing? Is it incomplete? What do you think? Okay, you're writing that down. All right, great. Pass it over. So now the next person receives that classmates, right, from 2 down, their paper. All right, the next step. I want you to go ahead and look at this whole essay, and I want you to highlight every time they have an MLA internal citation, right? That's all you're going to be doing here. You're looking for the citations. So do they have that, parentheses with the author's last name and the page number, or maybe just the page number if the author's last name is in the actual sentence itself? I want you to go ahead and find the research, right? Highlight the internal citations. And so they go ahead and do that, right? And then you say, okay, well, you were required to cite 3 different academic papers or academic sources in this text. So count them. Do they cite 3 different sources? If not, tell them how many they're missing, right? Look at the sources themselves, right, in their reference page, right? Are they academic sources? Are they from academic journals or books? Or is it like TikTok, right? or a blog post. Okay, point out if they're missing the required academic sources. Okay, next, shift. And then again, so you have like a different prompt for each person. So like that person can really focus on one element of the essay. And so maybe you do this a few times, and then the last person is like, okay, now it's time, just read the essay as a whole and give feedback on it. Look at these things. So they don't have to look at, the thesis anymore, they don't, other than reading it. You don't have to look at for citations. I want you to focus on what they've written themselves. Like, does it flow well? Does it make sense? Do you have any feedback on ways to improve it? That's that last person. So obviously this is the biggest chunk of time. And so that way, they get kind of feedback from multiple different people, and they can get a sense of, okay, missing these things, or I have these things. Here's the feedback that I've received from my classmates. So that can be like a more like fun way of doing peer review, where it's like, okay, we're like gonna be doing this quickly. Like, look for this, highlight that, give feedback on this, rather than just like go off and do this peer review and hope that they do it in detail. So that's another approach to take as well. A third option is to have them do an audio recording of their feedback. So a lot of times, I've had students who are like extremely critical in the peer review with nothing positive to say. And I think what makes that easier for students to do is because they're just writing it down, right? But if they actually had to have their voice out loud say X, right, they might think, okay, that maybe it's a bit harsh. Let me find another way of wording this. And they would likely, hopefully, say it in a more positive, polite way. I think as well, like when they don't have to write things down, where they can just do like, okay, here are my thoughts. I'm saying it aloud as I'm reading it. That can get them to give a lot more feedback, because they're just, doing stream of conscious feedback as they're reading through it, versus having to say, okay, like, where am I going to write this? Oh, the margin's too small. Never mind. I don't have to make that comment. Oh, another comment that I want to have to type out. Okay, track changes. Okay, add comment. Like, it can be easier, right? More efficient to do an audio recording, but I do think as well that it can leave, it's like, okay, let's, not be mean. This is my voice. I don't want this, to be seen as, negative thing, right? Like, okay, this person is really mean when they're critiquing. So there's that element, but as well, it can be more efficient. So again, okay, maybe you have a guide for them, or you might just say, I want you to create an audio recording where you're giving feedback to your classmate. Here are things to keep in mind. Obviously be polite when you're giving, your critique, but it doesn't have to be formal. You can literally just like read the paper aloud and like pause and give feedback as you're reading. So maybe you read the title and you say like, oh, great title for this reason. Or like, I'm not sure what this title means. Like, do you mean this or do you mean that? Start reading the introduction, give your thoughts on it, right? So just have that maybe, mentor text. Hey, here's an example of a recording I did. But really discuss how to approach it. And then again, okay, all you're doing is you're going to submit the audio to me and to your partner as well, right? Because you have to be grading it, and obviously their partner needs it in order to use the feedback on their essay. So I think I haven't had students do this, but it's one that I think potentially could work really well, because again, it's a bit more interesting and a bit more unique. And again, it could be more efficient as well to just say your thoughts rather than taking the time to write them out or type them out. So that's another approach you potentially can take as well. As a final thought, I do think that color coding can be very helpful in peer review. I mentioned it before about the highlighting and the speed dating one. But in general, I do think having, a student color code an essay for their partner could be very helpful. So at the reviewer, right, not the person who's writing it. So you might have, okay, like part of the review, here are these 3 color highlighters. I want you to highlight this element, and this element of this essay. So for literary analysis, I want you to highlight the topic sentences. I want you to highlight the close reading. I want you to highlight the analysis, okay? Or if it's not literary analysis, I want you to highlight all the research. I want you to highlight when they're talking in their own voice. And I want you to highlight any moments that you found were very confusing, right? And so that can be very helpful for students to see like, okay, this person highlighted the research versus me talking, and it's almost all research. I'm barely in here, right? That can be hard to notice if you're the writer yourself, but if your partner points it out, like, okay, like the instructor said, my voice is the most important part of my paper, and it's barely here. Obviously, I have to write more myself versus relying too much on research. Or if it's a literary analysis paper, right? Okay, like the person highlighted when I, did internal citations, paraphrased or directly for the close reading, and then another color was the analysis of that close reading, and basically I'm just paraphrasing and directly quoting and barely saying anything myself about that text. Obviously I need more analysis. So I think color coding can be really helpful as a peer review tool as well. But those are some ideas. I hope you found them helpful. Again, subscribe if you don't want to miss out on future content. Click like if you found this video helpful, and I'll see you next time.